Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson,
Here, ma'am.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Member Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Bros, Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember McCune,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Okay, thank you for that. There are no mayor's comments or announcements, so we'll move right into for information. Do we have any questions relating to the information items from any members of the council? If you could either raise your hand or signal on the screen. I see Councilmember McCutcheon with her hand up and then followed by Councilmember Edens. Councilmember McCutcheon, go ahead.
It's on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to talk about the Pond Grover Parkway signage. I saw the drawing and I'm still a little bit concerned because I don't know how noticeable those edges are going to be around the drawing. And I was wondering if there's a possibility of some funding somewhere that we could utilize to just go ahead and redo the signs in entirety. My thought would be maybe some of the event money that we haven't been using because we haven't been doing events. Is that possible?
Okay, I guess, will it be Director Vunich? I believe, did you get that information for the item here?
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, I did. And I would just say that any money that we saved in 2020 has been forwarded on to the budget, general revenue budget for 2021. There's no money set aside per se for events that did not occur. Is money available? I would have to defer to Mr. Cross, our interim city administrator, to see if there is some money available. I'm not sure how the tags are going to look on the sign. Mr. Brown may have some background on this since at one time he did work for the Missouri Department of Transportation. But I would always emphasize this is just temporary. And once we get back on our feet, so to speak, with non-COVID-19 revenues, there's a good chance we could do something then. Thank you.
Yeah, my concern is that one, it won't look, professional. Two, we'd be spending money for temporary signs, and then we turn around and spend money for permanent signs. So is this considered a safety issue?
Not necessarily, but certainly with the Office of Emergency Management already identifying Pond Grover Loop Road as Pond Grover Parkway, it's probably in everyone's best interest to get the name changed so there's consistency across the board. And again, based upon the area engineer's estimate, the tags for the 4 signs will cost approximately $500.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I have next Councilmember Edens, Rambo, and Councilmember Clark with their hands up. So next, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and for running the meeting tonight. So Rick, my questions are directed towards you under the funding for the roundabout, and specifically looking at how the costs were split. I know the table is fairly detailed, but one of the things we talked about Public Works and requested more information on was any cost sharing and future maintenance. Were you able to determine who would be responsible for landscaping and any necessary maintenance in the future?
And the road is Old State Road is a county roadway, so they would be responsible for the maintenance of the improvements, with the exception of the right-of-way, which would have to be maintained by either Ellisville, or excuse me, any landscaping, would have to be maintained by either Ellisville or the city of Wildwood, but it is a county roadway. They would maintain the roundabout and the improvements that are constructed, excluding landscaping.
So have you approached Ellisville and asked them to be responsible for the landscaping so that there are no hidden costs to this in the future?
No, I have not. As such, we are not that far into the design of the project. We haven't come up with a landscape plan. All we have is a concept drawing at this point, so it's a bit premature
Joe.
to have that discussion with them, to be quite frank. But as we get into it, we would certainly have that dialogue with them.
Mhm. Okay, my last question is about the $9,200 application fee. Is that part of the cost share split, or is that a separate fee that we are somehow responsible for turning in the application as the project sponsor?
Well, and Steve Cross, if you want to speak to that as well, we did have a discussion with Bill Schwer, the city administrator with Ellisville, and it was a very good discussion. And I think Bill led us to believe that he felt they would essentially share in the cost, not necessarily cap it at the figure that was previously stated. So if there were overruns, they would be willing to split the overruns with the city of Wildwood. So in the spirit of what he's saying, I would expect they would certainly be interested in or agreeable to splitting that fee to apply. It is $9,200. We get it back if we're not successful. But if you are successful, it helps fund the program through East West Gateway. Again, all the cost sharing would have to be worked out with an agreement between us and the city of Ellisville that would be prepared by Mr. Young, I'm sure, and would go through city council for final approval.
Okay, I think that the reason why we've had so many questions is that it feels like the cart is before the horse, even though it's not necessarily, because we're entering into an agreement that we are willing to split the cost, but some of the final details haven't been ironed out. And certainly, that application fee, it would make sense to split that, or if Ellisville would cover the cost. I mean, if we are managing this from an engineering point of view, I mean, that is time that we are devoting our staff to, and there's a cost associated with that, and also other projects we can't work on instead. So it would be lovely if they would, in the spirit of fairness, take over that cost entirely. But if not, yeah, it needs to be split, because otherwise it's not 230 or 230,000 split. It's really 230,000 for us plus the $9,200 that should be subtracted from our total.
Understood.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Interim City Administrator Cross.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Edens, in conversations with Mr. Schwer, who's the city manager for the city of Ellisville, I came away with a little stronger feeling that he pretty well agreed to split everything 50-50. I don't think there's anything that they would not be agreeable to. They did pass at their city council meeting last week that they would participate in this, the initial split of the $230,000. But he did say specifically that going forward, any cost would be split 50-50. So I'm pretty confident that whether it's an application fee or it's maintenance or whatever, any cost overruns, that they are quite happy, because they are as excited about that roundabout as we are, that they would split those costs 50-50.
And may I just ask a follow-up question to that? Oh, thank you. I just was concerned because some of the comments that had made the news were that there were some council members that just wanted to table it as a discussion. I understand that it passed the work session, but it was more to prepare legislation. And according to the memo, the final vote for their resolution would be February 3rd. So as long as our city just communicates that we want any additional costs to continue to be split, then I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you. I have council members Rambo, Bartoni, and McCune. So we'll go with council member Rambo.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on the parkway signage. I've seen those kinds of patches in the past, and my concern at the last meeting was the location of the patch on the overall sign, make sure it was symmetrical and it didn't look like a corner was cut off or something goofy like that. And the visual depiction that was provided sort of assuaged that concern. And I want to assure Councilmember McCutcheon that this won't look tacky at all in my experience. And I wanted to basically commend the city staff for figuring out a way to save 12.5K of a 13K bill in a way that's not going to affect the aesthetics or the safety or anything like that. And as Mr. Vunich mentioned, it's a temporary solution, but I think it'll fade into the background and no one will care about replacing those signs anytime in the future. So again, I give the staff their props for a creative solution that saved us quite a bit of money. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you. I got a question regarding the federal funding. So this is probably for Rick, and without intending to put the cart before the horse, because these projects are pretty far down the line, but the J-turns that are referenced, is that similar to the turns that are down around 141 and Vance Road in the Valley Park area?
It is similar, council member, but not exactly the same. It's a similar idea in that you would drive past the intersection to make your left turn. If you're familiar with 141, that area, there is a traffic signal at both those side roads. So the intent there was a little bit different because those intersections were previously signalized, and we don't have that in this situation. But it's similar from the standpoint that the left turn goes beyond the intersection, makes a left, and makes a U-turn to make the left turn in lieu of a direct left. Yes. Okay, and I mean, I'm familiar with that area and the turns. I don't ever have to make that turn, but I'm sure that it was probably frustrating at the beginning for residents, but like anything else, including roundabouts, you get used to them and you learn to like them. The only thing I would ask, Rick, is if, a year from now, because I don't know how old those J-turns are, but they're probably at least a year old. Sometimes things are a little bit older than you remember, but just like any sort of traffic or safety study in that area to make sure that, they've been safe, for the motorists and anybody else in that area before we would move forward with this. Like I said, this is a long way off, but I would just be curious about that if time comes. Well, I will tell you that MoDOT has been pushing this type of improvement statewide. It's been promoted actually at the federal level as well. And I know MoDOT has been very concerned. They want to be certain that these things are helping and improving safety overall. So they share that concern. I know there's at least one study that they completed. It's a little bit dated now, I think a few years old, but there's a study out there that the University of Missouri completed that was an evaluation of J-turns that were installed at several locations throughout the state. I could probably put my fingers on that and submit it to you if you're interested, or provide a link to that study if you'd like. Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Thanks for the answers. Appreciate it, Rick. Okay.
Provide it to everybody, Rick, so that we can share with each of our constituents as need be.
Okay, sure.
I'll just also make a quick comment here. Maybe it's good information to have regarding the items for 100, the two items. And talking with interim city administrator Cross today, I raised that we're going to have the deadline to East-West Gateway, which is February 11th. And we do have one more council meeting, which is February 8th. And so the intention is that Ryan Piercy, he is the engineer for this area with MoDOT, will be attending the February 8th meeting. And he's coming back because of the RSA, the road safety audit, which is something we asked for the last time he was here so that he could tell us what kind of interim measures could be taken by MoDOT to try to improve the safety of the road, which they had proposed as potentially a project in 2027. However, I think Rick, or at least interim city administrator Cross, made me aware today that we may be able to get into a similar kind of cost share arrangement with MoDOT with the East-West Gateway application, which would take down the 1.1 million responsibility of Wildwood and split it with MoDOT. So that would bring it down to just a little over $500,000. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I'm sure Rick could probably talk more about it when we get to that item later on, but wanted to bring it up since we're talking about that. All right, I've got Councilmember McCune, Remy, and Clark. So we'll go with Councilmember McCune.
Thank you. So my first question is about the sign on Pond Grover Loop or Parkway. Is that officially changed now, Joe? Like it's supposed to be Parkway in the official terms at this point in time?
Yes, when the committee began the deliberations on the name change, we contacted the Office of Emergency Management with St. Louis County. They made the alteration already, so that is how they're addressed for emergency dispatching purposes. The City Council approved the name change at its last meeting on the 11th, and so the ordinance just needs to be recorded with the Office of Recorder of Deeds, and then they'll pass it on to the assessor office and the revenue office as well.
Okay, yeah, it just leads me into the question, since we officially changed it then, and that's official with the E911 center. From St. Louis County, so if you call in an accident at that interstate, the dispatchers are not familiar with Wildwood. So I'd like Captain Mandel or the Board of Public Safety to make sure that that's educated to those first responders that are taking those calls, because that can be quite frustrating when they're calling it Pond Grover Loop when it's actually Parkway, and they seem to be confused that there's different intersections. So it delays the response for the call takers. So if Board of Public Safety can reassure that that's been corrected, I would really like to see that happen since it's official. And the second question I have with Councilmember Edens, I appreciate your comments with Ellisville. And it just kind of leads me into, I like the verbal agreement that Mr. Cross had said, but maybe Mr. Young can, there's some type of letter of intent or understanding that we can get from Ellisville for a solid commitment in a contractual way, that there's an intent here that they will do cost sharing and have they earmarked their budget to help them. They said, oh, we have it in our budget. So I think that that was well put by Councilmember Edens, and it is something that we need to be concerned with. So my question is Ellisville in?
All right. Is that a question, Councilmember McCune, or is that just a statement?
Yes, for the city attorney, is there some type of agreement that we can engage with Ellisville for those cost sharing measures instead of a verbal agreement?
Well, we can enter into any form of agreement we would like. I mean, I would ask Rick to give his impressions, but I've seen some situations where agreements have been entered into prior to application, but more often than not, I've seen it done as a letter of support or just a letter of intent, so that East West Gateway knows who's applying for this, or as a joint application. So I think Rick has a little bit more experience on what they're going to look for in terms of making sure that if Ellisville backs out at the last minute and we have to drop the project, who's going to receive the blame for it, which is ultimately what's the concern here. But we can certainly put together an agreement that says that that's what their intent is and that's what they're going to do.
If I can add quickly, I believe
Council, and I don't, we need it. I'm sorry, I covered you. Go ahead, Rick.
I was just going to make a quick comment. I believe, and it was referenced earlier in the meeting, on the City of Ellisville as a City Council agenda, I believe is going to be a resolution, just like is in front of you, in similar form for them to pass. So my expectation is that that resolution would be at least the indication on the part of their council that they are intending to split the cost with the City of Wildwood for the project, and we would have that presumably in hand after their meeting the first week of February and prior to your meeting in February.
Could those be rescinded though, resolutions, and re-evaluated, John? or reconsider due to budgetary actions or something that went wrong that they could get out of it?
Sure. So I think ultimately what the concern here is the city of Wildwood ever going to be stuck footing the entire bill? Is ultimately the concern. And my recollection of the way these East-West Gateway programs work is you submit your application, but you're not obligated to make expenditures until you actually sign the agreement with East-West Gateway to receive the funds. And at that point, we would have an agreement with Ellisville. So do we need it before we make the application? No, we can always back out before we sign the agreement after the application and the funds have been awarded. Now, the other part of that is, how does that make us look for future applications? I think what the intent here is to say, in the application, this is an application where we will be partnering with Ellisville. Ellisville has passed a resolution. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would imagine that we would include that resolution as part of the application so that if Ellisville ever backed out and said, we are not going to move forward with our obligations to share the funding, which then results in Wildwood potentially having to back out, East-West Gateway knows who the ultimate responsible party is.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear based on Councilmember Eden's concerns, and I think that it's diligent of us to make sure that there's some type of just handshake, that we do have the ability to kind of heal Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember McCune. We're going to move. I have Councilmembers Remy, Clark, and Edens. Councilmember Remy.
Chair Garitano, quick question. For items that are on the main meeting for the receive and file, is it appropriate for me to ask a question here, or should I wait till the main meeting?
I think it'd be appropriate to wait to the meeting when it's on the agenda there.
Then I have nothing. I'm just.
Okay. Councilmember Clark.
Yes, I had a question about the rural internet access project. Do we know what the timing is on the completion of the Homestead Shiloh project by Bays?
Councilmember Clark, I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, Mr. Bay of Bays ET thought the project would be done this fall. We've now extended into midwinter. I know that he has received all the approvals from the city of Wildwood, and the construction of the equipment pad has been completed by the city as well. Mr. Brown has issued all the necessary permits for work in the right-of-way. And the best news is Ameren, Missouri did grant Bays ET approval of its permits based upon the plans that were submitted for the aerial installation. Saying all of that, I'm hopeful that it will be the end of February or March when all the work is complete.
Do they have a timing, some kind of a timing on their target date?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, based upon past experience with Bays ET and the Hawks Rest subdivision, there they thought they would be installing fiber to the home for approximately 4 months. It was almost double that amount, and there's still some work going on at this time. So I just think it's an ambitious schedule, more optimistic than it probably needs to be. But if and when fiber reaches those two subdivisions, it'll be a game changer.
Okay, so to follow up on that, I had asked them in one meeting that we had if they could provide us with a weekly update on where they were and how far they had to go. And do you know if they have been doing that?
They have not been providing the Department of Planning any of that information. I know the trustees of both subdivisions, Homestead and Shiloh, communicate regularly with Mr. Bay and seek the same information that you're asking for tonight. And again, some of it is weather related, some of it is COVID-19 related, but I think it's just a bigger project than most people expected.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, Councilmember Edens.
Yep. Just wanted to harp back on the roundabout and really appreciated Councilmember McCune's comments. But also the other thing to keep in mind too is that they are having, like we are, an election. And I don't know enough about Ellisville politics to know if everyone's running again or if they're going to have a big turnover. So I would just ask that our Public Works Director and our City Administrator communicate to whoever that new group is again, you know, hey, we discussed with old council members that in the future you will be sharing costs on X, Y, and Z, because what I don't want to happen is to have a new political regime and, you know, get to the point in the future where those additional costs, there's no outline yet, as John Young said, to split those. So I just don't want to have some new folks go, oh, you know what, Wildwood can replace that tree when it's not even on our property. So we'll just have to be really cognizant that knowledge gets lost every couple of years and agreements don't necessarily stay in place when that happens. But I want to go back to the State Route 100 applications for those two projects. And Admin and Public Works, our discussion was almost entirely limited to the roundabouts. There wasn't really a particularly thorough discussion on these two proposed projects, which are certainly the most expensive. And I think one that was due to fatigue, but perhaps because everyone felt differently than I certainly did. So, you know, what I have been able to glean, and I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, is that MoDOT is still in the middle of a safety audit, has not come back with that, and will not until after this meeting, I believe in early February. And that if we wait for a couple of years, albeit 6 years, that MoDOT will fully fund this project. This will be the third grant application in the same pool, and it's unlikely that we would have all three accepted because of that. So since we're in a grant cycle, we have to have design, we'd have time, you know, spent on construction. At best, would you say it's fair that we would only be getting this done a year earlier than if we would just wait? I mean, what is the real benefit in terms of time of spending over $1 million as a city, or being a little bit more patient and not having any cost, and we could spend that on, you know, something else like infrastructure and rural internet somewhere else? And is there a cheaper temporary thing that we can do for public safety and work with MoDOT?
Is that a question to me?
It is a question. How does this change the timetable than just wait? I mean, you said adjusted for construction in 2025, but presumably it wouldn't be done in 2025.
Well, I think what I heard from Ryan Piercy when he met with us was that this project, and it is not funded on their part. So they have essentially a 5-year program. And right now they have not funded this project. Now they might in the future, but I think what he was saying is it wouldn't be constructed any earlier than that, but he wasn't saying they had committed to funding it. Okay. So there's a big difference. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't agree to fund it this year or next year or the year after. That's something we just don't know. If we were to wait another year, we'd have a little bit more clarity in that regard. If we waited 2 years, a little more as well. But those are the things we have to balance. There's clearly a lot of interest in some of these projects from residents and folks that travel those roads to see these improvements implemented quickly, because they do affect safety, and right. No one wants to push that any longer than necessary.
And so why did we choose this route as opposed to just a general cost share request with MoDOT?
Because it's an 80-20, so our match is only 20%, but the MoDOT standard cost share program is a 50-50. We have to put in at least 50%, so it's not as good a deal for the city. Okay. Now, what we want to explore, and I can't guarantee that this is a possibility, but what I do want to explore further is the possibility of taking the local match and turning around and applying to MoDOT to see if we could use their cost share program for the local match. And I've gotten conflicting information on that. I did bring it up with Ryan Piercy last week, and he seemed to think that that was a possibility. So we could essentially split the 20% with MoDOT. When I brought it up with East West Gateway, they said no, that wasn't something we could do. So I've gotten mixed signals on that, but I'd like to provide more clarity and get more information to you by the next council meeting to have a better understanding if that's a possibility or not, because that would certainly help even further.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps if it wasn't on the application, but was in a separate agreement with MoDOT, almost like a reimbursement, perhaps that would kind of be a loophole. I perhaps had misunderstood that MoDOT had already committed to these two projects just on a farther out timetable. My concern is in channeling the spirit of Greg Nani is that although this may be cheaper, it does let MoDOT off the hook for maintaining and improving the roadways that they should be responsible for.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Edens. I think I do see one more hand up. Councilmember Remy, is that your hand up for additional comment? Okay, so we have that one more hand, and then also just to make sure everyone's aware, we do have a 4-action item and a closed executive session that we need to go into. So Councilmember Remy, and then Councilmember, I see Bartoni as well.
Just a quick question for Mr. Brown, because I think the interaction with Councilmember Edens and him actually raised some questions I had. Could Mr. Brown prioritize the 3 grant proposals solely on safety?
Probably a little difficult to do all 3 because I don't have the crash records in hand for the left turn lane intersections right now. But I would say that when I look at the crash history at St. Albans Road, Route T, and at Pond Road at 100, it appears to be higher than what we've been told is the case at Ridge Road. So from a perspective of safety, it's very possible those might score a bit higher. The J-turn project may score a bit higher than the roundabout project on Ridge Road at Old State Road. I don't know about the left turn lanes yet and exactly how many crashes are there that might be prevented with the left turns at those 4 intersections right now. So I can't really comment too much relative to that. But ultimately, all these projects will be competing against each other, frankly, for money out of the available pond or pool of money for this year. And we've done that in the past, and that would be essentially the case here. If we put all 3 in or just 2 in, we don't know what other municipalities will submit. We don't know how good their projects are. And it's just a risk that you take. We might find out we get all 3 financed. We may get none of them financed. We just don't know.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bartoni, and then I see Councilmember McCune and Galani.
Thank you, Joe. Rick, got one other question, kind of unrelated to anything we've talked about, but it's been a month or so since we've gotten an update on the Strecker Road sidewalk. I did see some work going on in that area. It looked like some utility work. I don't know if that was related or not, but can you just kind of give us like a summary of where we're at right now?
I would be glad to if that's acceptable. I know that wasn't on the agenda explicitly for work session. But the department is still working through the environmental issues right now and expect to be coming back to City Council relative to potential phase 2 work for the sidewalk. We did complete a phase 1 environmental assessment last month. So we have that information in hand. The consultant geotechnology is still recommending that we do some additional phase 2 work. And I've got some pricing for that as well from them. So we'll have to make some decisions moving forward in terms of the level of phase 2 work that we want to do.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as what you saw, sir, I do not know I'm not aware of any work that we would be responsible for that you may have seen out there, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I don't know what it would have been either. It just, when I saw it, it made me think to ask the question tonight. So,
There are 2 properties for sale along that stretch right now. So that may have been potential buyers doing things.
Okay. I got Councilmember McCune. Did you still have your hand up or was your question answered? Okay. Councilmember Galani and I believe Dodwell and Councilmember Clark, did you have your hand up as well? Okay. We'll get to you in a second. So Councilmember Galani, you're up.
I just had a comment to make or a question to ask Rick regarding the roundabout on Old State Road. But I mean, I can wait until meeting when we're in meeting at the resolution. All right. What do you think?
This is more for information, just to get questions answered. You know, we can.
Yeah, I guess my question to Rick really quick was regarding these 3 applications for the federal aid. And you mentioned the fact that obviously they'd be competing against each other. And to Councilmember Eden's point, we really discussed the roundabout on Old State for most of the public works session with very little conversation regarding these other 2. My question is with the fact that they'd be competing against each other, would it make sense to potentially prioritize those applications when submitting them to the federal funding application process to say, you know, this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3, for the purposes if they were only going to approve one, that they would know which one, you know, the city was more leveraged in or intent on. And like I said, I with the fact that we've got this agreement with Ellisville, I mean, obviously it's in Ward 8, it's in my ward, but at the same time, I think, you know, it's a very cost-effective proposition, plus having it split with another municipality 50-50. I think it's a pretty remarkable ability to get something like this done for pennies on the dollar. So I just was wondering if we're able to do that. Thank you.
Councilmember, no, we're not allowed to prioritize them when we submit them. We just have to submit them and they stand on their individual merits. and there's really not much reason not to submit as many projects as you feel comfortable funding, essentially, because you just don't know what's going to happen in any given year. That's been my experience. You may get surprised and get funded on a project that you may not have expected. So, but we're not allowed to submit one and prioritize it over another. But I do say, you know, there are the other things they do take into consideration, and that we have going for us with Old State is, frankly, what you referenced is the cooperation and agreement with Ellisville to work with Wildwood. They do look at those things, and that helps in our scoring. So I think that's definitely a favorable aspect of the Old State Ridge project. It also was a project that was born out of a conceptual study that we did several years ago with Ellisville, with St. Louis County. So that planning effort occurred some time ago, and there was some public involvement at that time. So those are also good aspects of the project that make it evaluate more favorably than some other projects.
All right. Councilmember Dodwell, I'll have you up next.
Yes, I just wanted to make a real quick statement. I know we have a lot of newer people on council, but I do want to let you know that Rick has done this kind of work in the past for the city of Wildwood. And while we may not get, we may get 1, we may get 2, we may get nothing out of this round of things, I want to applaud him for reaching out to funding sources anywhere we can find them to help offset our costs for these. I think many of us are kind of putting the cart before the horse in that we don't know what kind of response we're going to get from East-West Gateway or from MoDOT or from any of the entities that are involved in this particular grant application. And I think it's very wise that the staff has taken the initiative to put these out in front of the community. In some years in the past, we've actually had, say, the south half of 109, MoDOT said, we can't do it this year, but we'll look at it again next year because we've got other priorities in front of them. So this puts our face out in front of the larger community and shows them that we are looking for the safety of our residents and those who travel through our corridors. And so I just want to commend Rick on moving forward and getting all three of these applications put in front of this committee. And the sooner we can do that and the more often we can do that, the more possibility we have of getting funds.
Thank you.
All right. I think we have one more hand up, just Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. So what criteria does East West use to determine whether or not they choose one program over another? Do we know that so that we can direct our application and the wording on it a little better? And what criteria do we use in Wildwood to determine if a project is classified in one of their categories of safety or traffic flow?
Councilmember Clark, the department is planning to submit these projects all under the classification of safety. So essentially they're judged on their merits relative to improving safety at the intersection. So they require us to submit all the crash records for a 5-year or 4-year period to them, and then they calculate a benefit cost ratio based on the cost of the project and the benefit of the crash reduction that's expected to occur with the construction of the project. So that's something that we will do in the next coming weeks to put the application together, and it gets submitted to East West Gateway with the application. But there's other aspects of the project. There's other information that they ask for, and it's, as I alluded to earlier, one of the big ones is the project part of a plan? Is it something that has been identified as a need through a planning effort, through a study? So I think in both cases we have that. We have achieved that goal through the prior concept studies that were done either with St. Louis County or by MoDOT on Route 100. So we have that going for us. We also have an element of cooperation between the cities, frankly, between MoDOT and Wildwood, if we're willing to step up to the plate and put some dollars towards improvements on Route 100. Those are all favorable things that tend to rate highly, and they look at those things when they're evaluating the projects. And frankly, I think that's why we've been successful at times, because we've been willing to do that in the past on projects.
Can we call anything safety issue just to get it? I just don't understand how do we determine whether an issue is a safety or a traffic flow?
Well, it's very difficult in my experience to get projects programmed for what I would call traffic flow improvements. Because, and I tried to express this at the Edmond Public Works meeting, traffic flow means you have to reduce delay to motorists that use the intersection. A lot of these improvements, when you're starting with an intersection that does not have an all-way stop or traffic control in place, the reality is when you build that roundabout, you're going to incur delay on 3 approaches rather than potentially 1 approach, or primarily 1 approach. So the delay may be higher, or frankly is higher for the overall users of the intersection, not lower. So they just don't evaluate favorably in those terms. If it was an all-way stop intersection, and the example I use is on 109 at Wild Horse Creek Road, that project, MoDOT submitted that for funding as a CMAQ project, a congestion mitigation project for funding. By building the roundabout there, we were eliminating the all-way stop and reducing delays overall for that intersection. That was clearly a traffic flow improvement, not a safety improvement. An intersection such as Route BA and 109, we applied for both at that intersection. We were able to get funded through safety, not through traffic flow, through safety. Because of the fact that there were a true crash history at that intersection. Again, the delays were not necessarily reduced by the construction of the roundabout. Overall traffic flow was better, but the delays may have not been reduced, if that makes sense. So a lot of it comes down to my engineering judgment, quite frankly. I guess is what I'm telling you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, seeing that we don't have any more hands up, we're going to proceed with the for action section of the agenda. We do have one item, which is the Farmers Market Manager 2021 contract. Joe, do you have anything you want to mention regarding that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, the Planning and Parks Committee considered the market manager contract at its last meeting in December of 2020. The market would be entering its 12th season, and over the past 2 years, Natalie McAvoy has been the market manager. In those 2 years, the market has seen substantial improvements, both in terms of the number of vendors, the variety of products the vendors offer, and just generally the overall operation of the event each Saturday from May till October. Ms. McAvoy is interested in providing that service in 2021. None of the requirements would change relative to the agreement from in 2021 from 2019 or 2020, meaning that compensation levels would remain the same as the last 2 years, as well as all other components of the agreement. After hearing the presentation by the department, the Planning and Parks Committee unanimously recommended that Ms. McAvoy be offered the position of market manager for the 2021 season. Therefore, tonight, the department is respectfully requesting authorization from the City Council to prepare the necessary legislation for the agreement so that in 2021, Ms. Natalie McAvoy will be the farmers market manager. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to prepare the motion to prepare the required legislation of the agreement? I did see Councilmember Remy's hand up. Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then I did see secondly, Councilmember Bartoni. Is that a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've got the motion on the floor. Any questions regarding the motion? All right. Seeing none, then all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
It
Okay,
must be on a timer.
Great. So we have now an executive closed session. So we may be able to get one part of it done, and then depending on how far along, we'll see if we can continue to either get that done. So we do need a motion to go into closed session Oh, yes. All right. So the interim city administrator has just some instructions regarding closed session. So you want to cover those after we make the motion? Yeah, why don't you cover it now? Because then we will be going into closed session after we take the vote.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. You all received a couple emails, the most recent being the mayor's message, and he attached the closed session checklist that we were asked to put together after the closed session from the last meeting. There was a little bit of confusion whether all laptops were turned off and so forth. So for purposes of tonight's closed session meeting, after you all vote to go into closed session, we ask that you click on the leave button as if you were ending for the evening and close your laptop. And then when we come out of closed session and come back into what will probably be the general session, then you'll need to rejoin the meeting as you did when you first started the work session. So not only we'll do that, but then when we go into the room, I'll verify, and then by the same token, I've asked Mr. Jacquin to also, he's monitoring, he'll put up the that says we're in closed session, but he will also check and make sure that everyone's has left the meeting so that there's no audio and there is no video. So before you leave this room or the other room, just leave the meeting entirely and close your laptop if you would, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we need a motion then to go into closed session with regards to RSMO 610.021, item 2, and then RSMO 610.021, item 3. Is there someone willing to make a motion to go into closed session? I see any hands up. All right, Councilmember Nyan, and seconded by Councilmember Flasher. Oh, all those in favor, say aye. Oh, actually, you know what? We got to do a roll call vote. We got to do a roll call on this one. So, Ms. Eldridge?
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani, Councilmember McCune,
Abstain. There.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Mr. Vunich, if you would kindly come down to the community room. Yours is a short item, so we'll take yours on this part, and then Rick will do yours after the general session. Just hit leave. Yeah, they can.
You got to log me back in? Yeah.
Everybody's got to log back in. And Julian, you're going to take the sign down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, yeah. She was having headphones issues earlier.
Right. But she said she started comparing. She said it's her computer. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, we were working on it earlier, we just ran out of time.
Okay.
We were doing a Windows update and just didn't get done before the meeting started.
All right. I'm ready to throw that computer out the window.
All right, I'm gonna have to go ahead and come back.
Now that we just put in a brand new hard drive, I can't afford to pitch it now.
I can hear you, you're broadcasting your live. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get started in about 30 seconds, if that works.
Julian, sir. Right, I'm still locked up. Okay, yeah, I'll have you right there. Does it have you can see your? Does it have you like watching the meeting? If you just need to hear the big speaker and turn on, everybody just turn their.
Ms. Eldridge, are you online?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to call the Monday, January 25th City Council meeting to order. We'll start with the roll.
Mayor Boland, Councilmember Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Stuck.
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Remy,
Present.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember McCune,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can join me to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on the agenda, we have the approval of the January 11th, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes made by Councilmember Galani? Is there a second? I see Councilmember McCutcheon. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes? I see none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, next on the agenda is the public participation portion of the agenda here. I'm going to just make a couple of comments here that public participation is a valuable component of our meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak should either raise their hand on the Zoom meeting here or provide a chat there so we could know and identify you, and then we'll be able to call you when it's your time. When it is your time, just state your name and ward. Make sure that for all that wish to speak, that they have the opportunity to do so. There is a 5-minute time limit per speaker. And please address only the council and Mayor Pro Tem. Talking between those speaking at the podium and others in the audience is prohibited. Our public participation hearings are now a time for questions and answers with us. Any questions you raise this evening will be duly noted by our city team members seated here. And when indicated, they or either one of us will respond to you personally or place the answer on the city council page or website. Be respectful of others in making your remarks. This means no interrupting of speakers, council members, and the use of either profane or abusive language. And again, in advance, thank you very much for following this. Do we have any public speakers?
Mayor Pro Tem, there are, looks like 4 individuals in the public attendee list. If we'd like to give them a second to find the raise hand feature.
You either use a raise hand, or I believe there's a chat if you want to enter your name in there to be called to speak. All right, doesn't look like we have any public speakers for this evening. So we will proceed with our agenda here. Announcements and appointments. I do have a couple of comments here. Just as you may have noticed, Mayor Boland is unable to attend the meeting this evening, and in such a case, our charter provides that the Mayor Pro Tem shall preside over the meeting. The Mayor Pro Tem is selected by the City Council annually from amongst its members, and I currently have the honor of holding that position. Therefore, as Mayor Pro Tem, I have a duty and privilege to preside over the City Council meeting this evening. Although I'm sitting in the Mayor's chair, I'm still a council member, retain the office and duties of a council member, including the right to vote on matters presented for action by the council. In addition, it's worth noting I have no power of veto, nor can I break a tie vote of the City Council. So thank you for that honor again. All right, we have an appointment for this evening, the appointment of Councilmember Rob Jaxie of Ward 6 to the Economic Development Committee. Is there a motion made by Councilmember Edens and seconded by Councilmember Rambo? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes. Congratulations, Councilmember Jaxie, to your appointment to the committee. I'm sure you will do great and you have a great team to work with there.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to move on. We do not have any public hearings, but we do have several legislation items here. So just a moment while I get my information here. These papers. Let's see. All right, here we go. All right, unfinished business. We have Bill 2587 that is before the council for final passage and concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion for a second reading of the bill? Councilmember Brost, and I see seconded Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2587.
Bill 2587, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a supplemental agreement on behalf of the City of Wildwood with Suvino, Wade, and Morton Incorporated for additional design services required for the Manchester Road Shared Use Path project within the City of Wildwood, second reading.
Hey, Rick, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided to the council?
No, sir, I do not, but I'm available for any questions from the council.
All right, Bill 2587 is on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? I see Councilmember Clark with your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one question. Could you explain the amount that we have I'm sorry, 2587 says budgetary impact is 42,000, and in this it says with a cap of $229,460.28 when combined with 2586, and 2586 is 273,100 with a delta of $85,142.10. Could you just explain that to me? I don't understand how the math works out.
I will do my best. So I think what might be throwing you a little bit there, Councilmember Clark, is that the original bill actually had an allowance of an additional $10,000, a contingency of $10,000. So the contract amount originally was 187, just under 188,000, but the maximum authorized under the prior bill was actually 197,000. So the difference between 197 and the final authorization is only about 30,000 relative. It's 10,000 less than what we're asking for with this supplemental agreement because we already had 10,000 accounted for in the original agreement. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I'm not following.
So the amount of the supplement is about $42,000. In the original bill, we had a $10,000 contingency. So 10,000 of that 42,000 is already covered in the original bill. This new bill only makes allowance for the remaining $32,000.
Okay, that would still leave like a $75,000 difference.
So the new maximum amount is just under 230,000 for the engineering.
Okay, but the amount for 2587 plus the amount for 2586, if you subtract the 10,000, you still have 304,000 and a half.
No, we're only asking for an increase of about 42,000 on top of 187,000, which was originally authorized.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding Bill 2587? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
All right, the bill passes. All right, moving on. Next, we have Bill 2588. Ms. Eldridge, this is before the council. It concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell and seconded by Councilmember Flasher. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read 2588.
Bill 2588, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing certain changes to Chapter 415 of the city's municipal code zoning ordinance, specifically Chapters 415.090 through 415.210, Sections B and C inclusive, which will modify them to address their respective permitted and conditional uses in terms of additions, deletions, and changes to reflect new trends, changing preferences, and resident input, all being consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter of recommendation on this matter dated November 16th, 2020, second reading.
All right, Joe, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided to the council?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I do not. The bill has not been altered since its introduction, but I am available for any comments or questions.
All right, Bill 2588 is on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion, Councilmember Edens?
Yes, I have a question for Rick. Or no, sorry, not Rick, Joe. Apologies. It occurs several places, but it starts on page 3 of the PDF attachment. C, number 1, the language for religious purposes was added, and that continued to happen farther down the PDF. So I guess my question is, if I understand that correctly, it would change this so that administrative offices and educational facilities are permitted by right unless it's for religious purposes, and then you need a CUP.
There's a bit of a history to that particular item. In the original zoning ordinance adopted at the time of the incorporation, the wording as presented tonight was what was, that was the original. Somewhere in the codifications, that for religious institutions was somehow inadvertently eliminated. And so from that perspective, this change tonight is just reflecting the error that was made many, many years ago. It is a conditional use permit, and the permitted uses, it's not inclusive in the permitted uses, so it's not allowed by right. Only those things that are identified in the permitted uses are allowed by right.
Okay, but just to follow up, but educational facilities that are not religious are allowed by right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
all schools, public and private, and any, and in certain instances, childcare facilities in association with schools. Those things are all permitted by right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Anything else from the council regarding Bill 2588? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Fleck,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Okay, the bill passes. Moving on, next we have Bill 2590 before the council for final passage and concerns Ward 6. Is there a motion for second reading of the bill? Councilmember Rambo and Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2590.
Bill 2590, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding with Gateway Off-Road Cyclist, GORC, to grant that organization the right to construct certain trail facilities in Bluffview Park, which have been presented to the Planning and Parks Committee and City Council and been accepted therein, thereby now permitting such activities to proceed at this location in accordance with the approved plan for such. Second reading.
Hey, Joe, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, other than, again, I'd like to thank John Young, our city attorney, for his assistance on the memorandum of understanding, and also Brian Adams with Gateway Off-Road Cyclists for his efforts as well. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them at this time.
Hey, got any questions for Joe? All right.
Thank you.
Seeing none, then Bill 2590. Ms. Eldridge, please go ahead and then call the roll for final passage. Oh, actually, hold on a second. Councilmember Rambo, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to state my enthusiastic support for this. Councilmember Jaxi and myself met these folks over at Bluffview and walked around and looked at what they're trying to do. And it's this GORC is a really great resource for the city. The caveat to that is that they're over time, we have to be careful that we don't have an overemphasis on off-road cycling at the expense of the hikers and nature lovers and the equestrians and so forth. But I think they're well aware of that, and they seem very, very interested in doing things the Wildwood way and protecting the trees and so forth. And it was great to see the kids over there enjoying themselves and families and so forth. And I love what they're doing. So I just wanted to express my support.
All right, duly noted. All right, Ms. Eldridge, go ahead and please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Fisher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
All right, the bill passes. We have Next, Bill 2591, and it appears also Bill 2592. These are both lot splits. So, City Attorney Young, is that okay if we do these two en masse for a second reading, or would you recommend we do them separately?
For the second reading, yes, but for approval, each one will have to be read separately.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then call Bill 2591 and 2592 before the council for final passage. 2591 concerns Ward 1 and Bill 2592 concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of these bills? Seeing Councilmember Clark and Councilmember Galani, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please go ahead and read bills 2591 and 2592.
Bill 2591, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a lot split plat for an existing lot of record that is located within the west fractional half of Section 5, Township 45 North, Range 3 East, or more specifically situated on the north side of Hart Road, west of Wild Horse Creek Road, will hereafter be known as the Mertz Hart Lot Split Plat. Bill 2592, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a lot split plat for an existing lot of record that is located within Section 12, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, or more specifically being situated at the terminus of Willow Glen Drive, such public street also within the 7 villages of Cherry Hill subdivision, will hereafter be known as the Marley River Lot Split Plat, second reading.
Okay, we have both of these bills, 2591 and 2592, on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, then again, according to City Attorney Young, we'll have to call these separately, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll do the first one. Ms. Eldridge, if you could do a roll call for final passage of Bill 2591.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
All right, Bill 2591 passes. Now we'll go ahead and, Ms. Eldridge, if you can please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2592.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
All right, Bill 2592 passes. So now
I
we
didn't
have,
get Councilmember Nyan's vote.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Bill 2592 has passed. So now before us, we have Bill 2593, and similarly, 2593 and 2594, these are lot consolidations. So if there is no objection, we'll do the same here. We'll handle these two en masse here. Any objection? Seeing none. All right. So Bill 2593 and 2594 before the council. 2593 concerns Ward 6 and 2594 concerns Ward 6 as well. Is there a motion for the second reading of these bills? Councilmember Rambo and second, Councilmember Jaxi. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read bills 2593 and 2594.
Bill 2593, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing the consolidation of 2 parcels of ground now known as lots 41 and 42 of the Fox Creek Valley subdivision, identified by St. Louis County Assessors Locator Number 27Y310021, combined for single tax billing purposes, all being located as part of the southwest quarter of Section 29 and part of the northwest quarter of Section 32, Township 44 North, Range 3 East of the 5th Principal Meridian in the city of Wildwood, St. Louis County, Missouri, and more specifically situated at the northeast corner of Fox Creek Court and Reynard Lane, thereby creating a single 7.68 acre legal lot of record to be hereafter known as Lot A of Fox Creek Valley, Plat 4, second reading. Council Bill 2594, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the consolidation of 3 lots of record, those properties being lots 20, 21, and 22 of Acacia, which are located in U.S. Survey 3026, Township 44 North, Range 3 East of the 5th Principal Meridian, and more specifically situated between Acacia Road and the Merrimack River, to be known as the Acacia Consolidation of the lots 20, 21, and 22, second reading.
All right, thank you. Joe, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided here?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I do not, but to the City Council and you, I am available for any questions or comments regarding the 2 consolidations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have bills 2593 and 94 on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, again, we'll call roll separately for these bills. So Ms. Eldridge, if you can please call roll for final passage of Bill 2593.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Okay, Bill 2593 passes. Now, Ms. Eldridge, if you can please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2594.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes?
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Bill 2594 passes. We do not have any new business on the agenda, so we'll move into resolutions. Resolution 2021-2 is before the council and concerns Ward 7, and it also concerns Ward 8. So is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-2? Councilmember Flasher, made by him, seconded by Councilmember Gulani. Let's see. Ms. Eldridge, please read the resolution.
Resolution 2021-2, a resolution of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the submission of an application to the East-West Gateway Council of Governments and the Missouri Department of Transportation for federal funding of a capital improvement project to design and construct a new roundabout intersection improvement on Old State Road at Ridge Road under the Surface Transportation Program suballocated STP-S funding program for the St. Louis region.
Okay, Rick, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided?
Mayor Pro Tem, no, I do not, but again, I am available for any questions.
Okay, resolution 2021-2 is on the floor. Is there any discussion? Okay. Oh, Councilmember Rambo, is that your hand up?
Yes, it was. I wasn't sure when to bring this up, whether the work session or now, but there seems to be a lot of concern from a number of the council members about the vague nature of this process, and it seems that we could have work out some way to get a better handle on these than just relying on Director Brown's exemplary engineering experience. I still don't understand why this particular resolution wasn't a traffic flow issue, because there's no accident data to speak of on this, but there's a groundswell of support for it based on traffic flow, through that area. And if I'm personally concerned that submitting 3, we don't have any control and any further input in terms of how they rank order these and which ones get approved. It's just kind of it goes into a black hole, and hopefully 1 or 2 of the approvals come out in our favor. And it just seems, I would hate to see a true safety issue trumped by an issue that might be considered more of a traffic flow issue. And I don't know how to solve that, and I don't have any motion to make, but I'd welcome any other comments on that particular topic.
Rick, do you want to go ahead and answer that? Maybe explain how maybe East-West prioritizes their applications?
Well, again, as we've talked, when you submit an application, you do have to choose a category that is the primary purpose of the project. And I was describing, based on my experience, and I think the way we approached it last was to submit the application for Ridge Road as a safety project. There's no question it's also a traffic flow project, but again, traffic flow only gets points if it reduces delays. And the problem is, again, at Old State, when you install that roundabout, you're actually going to increase delays because you are delaying all the vehicles, not just the vehicles on Ridge Road. And that's the problem. The accident history, it does have an accident history. The question is it strong enough? Will the benefit cost ratio be great enough that the project is selected? And really the only way to know that is to submit the application. There is no loss of the application fee unless we're successful. There is, obviously there is staff time involved in the submittal, but that's really the only risk to the city by submitting the application.
I'm sorry, but is there a risk of not being approved for a more critical, a project that we view as more critical because we've submitted a number of projects all under the rubric of safety? Because I got what you explained the first time you explained it, and the second time, but I still don't feel comfortable with that, as an answer. And if it's just, I'm complaining about a process that we don't have the ability to improve, then I'll just shut up and color. But it seems as though we could do some things on our end to better prioritize, if not now, in the future. I'm in favor of all these projects, but I don't know that we adequately considered, the prioritization. Adequately again.
Again, the projects will be all evaluated by East West Gateway individually on their merits. So we're not hurting our chances by submitting 3 applications. They will all be evaluated on their individual merits. So the best candidates will be the ones that are chosen. It may be none of our projects, it may be all of our projects, but they're all judged independently for their merits. I was going to say one more thing, and I'm losing my train of thought. Maybe if it comes back to me, I'll bring it up. But there is no disadvantage for submitting 3 projects. In fact, it would be advantageous to submit as many as we feel we can afford if we're successful in being funded.
Okay, I'll shut up, but it just seems, a little silly to submit a whole bunch of projects that we have that have varying benefits to the community, and hope that we get some approved, which may not be the ones we really wanted approved. And it just seems as though there ought to be a way to rank them. That's it.
I would suggest to the council that we have done this for many years now, and we've been quite successful doing it for those years. In fact, we've kept a tally of our federal funding that we've obtained over the years, and I want to say it's approaching $30 million at this point. So we've had great success, and you're not guaranteed on any application you're going to be successful, but it's just like playing the lottery. If you don't play, you're not going to win.
All right. I see a couple more hands up. I have Councilmember McCune. I've got you down, Councilmember Clark and Galani. So Councilmember McCune. Councilmember McCune, do you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I have audio problems, so I'm calling in on my phone now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we fully understand, and I think, Joe, you can comment on this too. You were there when the county came and talked about the improvement of Old State and Ridge and the concerns that they had at the time and all the residents' input. But I think what is important, even though if accident data is not there from the safety aspect, I think that there is a safety aspect because we have Ridge Elementary School there, and the buses have to make those turns and those left-hand turns. And that was one of the main concerns, and kids riding their bike that live in that area. That's a very dangerous intersection. So I think that we need to look at that where we're in close proximity of a school. Also, that interchange will service more Wildwood residents than Ellisville. And I also think that the accident reporting, are we pulling from Ellisville, Wildwood? Is it the county writing the accidents? Like, who has jurisdiction, and are we getting the correct data? If it's a minor accident, is it reported to some level? So I appreciate what Rick said, and I think you're right. It doesn't matter which ones are going to win. It's not what Wildwood gets to determine. It's MoDOT, and why not see what we can get and not get? But I just don't want to negate the fact that there is a safety issue there for the school buses and the kids and the residents in Ward 7 and 8 that travel that. I think that if you saw the amount of traffic that travels in there in the morning and the evenings, and I think Ricky could supply that later in an email, I think that you guys would see a difference and have maybe a different opinion on that. I just don't want to shoot it in the foot to minimize that this is not an important project for us where it is. So that's my comments. And Joe Garetano, I would really appreciate your comments on this too, and based on the meetings that you had attended several years ago with me with the county and their input.
Sure. I'll speak after I give everyone else a chance. So
Okay,
Councilmember
thank you.
Clark, you're up next. Thank you.
Yes. So I have to repeat some things that Rob said. The criteria for determining whether or not something is a safety issue just has not been clearly spoken tonight. If we had something that said this is a safety issue and this is a traffic flow issue, it would make this so much easier. If, because it's by a school building, because of school buses, because of crash data, all of these things could be our criteria for determining. If we don't have that, and we have been just using crash data and cost benefit and different things to determine what we're going to apply for, and what we call safety issues, we have no solid reason for thinking that one is going to be chosen over another one or as a priority. I think the priority comes in the east-west designation of safety or traffic flow. If they determine that a safety related application is higher on the choice list than traffic flow, that's the way they have prioritized it. I'm a little reluctant in just accepting that, yes, it is a safety issue unless we have a criteria to base that on. Also, should we, I guess my question is for Mr. Young. Should we try to postpone this and all three of these together, or wait and postpone the last two separately until the next meeting so that we can revise them slightly?
If there's a desire to make revisions prior to the next, or prior to final passage, with confirmation from the Director of Planning that there's sufficient time to make the amendments required after the next meeting, assuming final passage, then yes, postponement would be appropriate. But I would defer to Mr. Brown to tell me whether or not, what that does to his time frame and timeline.
Again, the applications are to be submitted on February 11th, and our next council meeting is February 8th. So if there was a decision made on the 8th, we could still submit the application, and we will plan to be able to submit the application.
Would the motion go for all three at the same time?
Separate items. So we have a motion right now actually on the floor for this one here.
Okay.
All right, got Councilmember Galani. Have your hand up?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's just unmuting. Yeah, I just wanted to make several points related to this resolution. And I just want to say that a couple weeks ago, we at Public Works discussion, we talked about this subject for close to 2 hours actually. And we rehashed and went over every detail that you could possibly talk about regarding it prior to Public Works approving it and sending it to council. So all of these points that have been brought up tonight were discussed ad nauseum that night, and we had many residents that were also in attendance. So I just wanted to reiterate a few points maybe to council that was discussed that night that might ease some concerns and better help everyone understand it. So number one, I would say that Rick Brown has significant experience in putting these applications together and successfully gaining approval for the federal funding, as he just alluded to previously. So, he discussed at length the fact that, he knows how to write these applications and how to word them appropriately to where the folks that are reviewing them will have the best chance of approving it. Once again, there's no guarantee, but we've got somebody who's got a lot of experience and success in doing this. So I think we should give him credit for that. And if he's telling us that he's writing this application in an adequate way, then that's good enough for me. Second of all, regarding the project here, there is a traffic flow issue. And for those that might not be as familiar with that area of the city, it's become a major artery of transportation between the Highway 40 corridor and the Highway 44 corridor, very similar to 109, which Old State runs into. So there's significant amount of traffic cutting through there, especially when there's an accident on one of those two highways. And then secondly, or another point, that there is a safety issue. And I think that sometimes we get clouded with the fact that if there's not significant accident data of deaths that have taken place at a place, that it's not really a safety problem. I don't think that's a fair assessment. There's a significant safety issue there because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. There's a lot of families and children that ride their bikes. I personally live in Crown Point Estates, which is just down Ridge Road from that specific intersection. And I can tell you that, especially during COVID this past year, my kids and I were regularly taking walks and riding bikes, and it was very, very dangerous to try to navigate through there because cars come flying through. And so I would advocate that the fact that there's not a lot of actual major accidents that have taken place are because people go through extra lengths to avoid that. So nobody wants to get in an accident, but most of the time you have to make a right turn off of Ridge Road, drive down past the light at Pierside and turn around to come back, and when you really wanted to make a left because it's far too dangerous and impossible to make a left when you've got traffic. And to Councilmember McCune's point, those buses for Ridge Road for Ridge Meadows Elementary have to make that left turn there, and it's a complete disaster during the morning and evening commutes, especially if the weather has issues. So there definitely is a safety problem there that needs to be addressed. And then regarding priority, that's been brought up as well. This isn't a new discussion for the council. This isn't a new task or project that's being looked at. This has literally been tabled for many years. Matter of fact, when I first had talked to Joe over a year ago when I was considering running for council, he asked me what would be the number one thing that I would look to try to get done as a council member. And I brought up this specific project, which is something that he had been working on for at least 2 to 3 years prior to that already. So I think when it comes to prioritization, this project has certainly taken back seat and waited its due turn of process to get to where it is today on the table. And then lastly, I just want to discuss the cost, because that's seemingly what we all talk about most of the time with any project or bill that we're looking at. And when you look at the cost that we're on the hook for, should we get approved for this project, it's literally pennies on the dollar. We're talking about a $230,000 all in for a $2.3 million project. And we've already got another municipality that's agreed to go halvesies with us on this should we get approved, which is something you don't typically see. So when we're talking about the other two projects that we're applying for here at $600,000 a piece, we're far less than that should we even get approved. And then, we're literally applying for this thing that even if we got approved, we would still then have to discuss if we're actually going to do it and how that would look. But I think at this point, for what we're looking at and the investment that we're talking about, if we do get approved, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. So sorry for my long-winded comments, but I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, in a prior discussion about this very project, I'm made a very bold statement in favor of child safety. I mean, that's very controversial and going out on a limb, but I wanted to drive that stake in the ground. I've seen that we've talked it to death, as Mr. Jelani says, but I appreciate Director Brown's expertise, and I've stated my support for this project already. Our objections are to are process related. I don't want to wind up with budget trouble in the future. We had some second tier priority projects that we've approved, and now we can't get an acute problem addressed because we don't have the money to pay for it. And there's got to be some way to improve the process with some sort of flow chart, criteria matrix or something like that. That's the only point I was trying to make, and that's all I was suggesting. Hopefully we can all think about it and come together when the time is right and develop a solution. That's it.
Thanks, Councilmember Rambo. I'll just respond to Councilmember McCune that she had mentioned about the session that took place. It was around 2016, 2017. It was a comprehensive project back then. So it was not only just a roundabout, but 2 roundabouts along Old State Road, and then also a path along that. So there was a open house that was done for the community in Lake Chesterfield at the clubhouse there, and residents went over there to provide comment. Just to echo what Councilmember Galani said, it's been an item that comes up when I talk to people. It was evident at the last admin public works meeting. We had a number of participants, but it's been something that's been coming up since before I came on council. And I don't think it'll just go away. The residents are just going to keep asking about something to be done over there. So, that's where I hope that the process with East West, I think they have a process that determines what projects get selected, and they use various criteria. So the best of the best will get picked. If this one just doesn't have the legs to stand, then we'll know it. And that will be evident in the outcome of that process. So that's all I've got to say. Councilmember McCune, you had your hand up as well, or next?
Yes, I just want to call the question.
Okay, having called the question, is there any objection to the question? Otherwise, we'll have to take a vote. All right, seeing none, we have the resolution then on the floor, 2021-2. All in favor of the motion to adopt resolution 2021-2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. Next, we have resolution 2021-3 before the council. It concerns wards 1 and 6. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution? Made by Councilmember Brost. Is there a second? Councilmember Rambo. Ms. Eldridge, please read resolution 2021-3.
Resolution 2021-3, a resolution of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing submission of an application to the East-West Gateway Council of Governments and the Missouri Department of Transportation for federal funding of a capital improvement project to design and construct restricted crossing U-turn intersections, J-turns, at State Route 100 with Pond Road and State Route T, St. Albans Road, under the Surface Transportation Program Suballocated STP-S funding program for the St. Louis region.
All right, thank you for that. Recalling a conversation earlier I had with Councilmember Clark, I did want to ask the question if that was still an intention to do to make an amendment or a motion to postpone the item.
Yes.
Okay, do you want to postpone then to the next meeting, I'm assuming?
Oh, yes, I'd like to move that we postpone this resolution 2021-3 until the next meeting to give the department time to revise it to a level of 2021-2A, and this to include the possible MoDOT share of our 20% of the total cost.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilmember Clark. We need a second. Councilmember Rambo. So just discussion on the motion right now to postpone to the next meeting, if everyone is understanding of that or any questions regarding that. All right. Seeing none, then we're going to go.
Joe, I got a question. Sorry.
Sure. Mhm.
So we're postponing this. Why? What's going to be different in 2 weeks?
Well, I could start off, and I'm sure Councilmember Clark, the maker of the motion. So this pertains to Highway 100, an improvement, and we have Ryan Piercy from MoDOT who will be coming to our meeting at the next meeting. So we may hear some information that comes out of the RSA study, but also there is potentially the option where we could cost share with MoDOT. So right now, when we apply to East-West Gateway, it's an 80-20 split, and we may have the option to split the 20% with MoDOT. So therefore, the city of Wildwood would only be responsible for 10% or half of what you see here for the city's commitment. So we want Rick to have that conversation to validate and confirm it, because there has been misleading information. Rick, in talking with East-West Gateway, had said that that was not allowed, but he had a conversation with MoDOT, with Ryan, who said they were actually indeed doing the very same thing with another city right here. So it makes sense if we can partner to split that cost. It would benefit our city and save us cumulatively, both this resolution and the next resolution, about $500,000. So that is.
Well, I understand that, but go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
So that's there. I'm going to let Councilmember.
Well,
Sorry, did you say something?
Well, I understand that if we could split our 20% with MoDOT, that would be great. But if we pass this resolution, does that mean that split is not possible?
Well, it's the language.
Because it could still be possible down the line, correct?
I believe it's the language in the resolution right now needs to be modified. So Rick has to have that conversation. If MoDOT is willing to split it, then they would have to modify the language in the resolution and bring the modified language at the next meeting for us to vote on.
And Rick, do you think you can get a commitment from MoDOT by the next meeting?
I don't know that I'll have a firm commitment because that's a separate program and it would require a separate application. But I want to explore it to be able to at least have an answer whether that option is possible or not. And right now I'm getting conflicting information.
Okay, I can appreciate some clarification, and I know that this application is not due until after the next meeting, but the residents that drive 100 have been pretty adamant about getting this. I wouldn't want to mess this up, but I'm confident that we won't.
Yeah, I think it would be, and Councilmember Clark, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the intention is, if we are not able to get any new information, then the same resolution today would just come back to the council and we would vote on it then.
Exactly. That is what I was going after, because I also did not want to postpone this just because it's late notice. But after speaking with Mr. Young, Attorney Young, I changed my mind, because he said this would be a better option to change the wording ahead of time and to just be ready for it, because we only have a few days after the next meeting to submit it. It's supposed to be submitted on the 11th and the meeting's on the 8th. So yes, Pro Tem Garitano expressed all of my concerns very well.
Okay, Councilmember Remy, you have your hand up.
I do, and I'm just wondering, in regards to this issue and giving timing, and then certainly obviously wanting to know what the gentleman from MoDOT says, might it be more advantageous to send this to Admin Public Works, which meets on February 2nd, and add Mr. Percy to that meeting So therefore, then he would have to discuss that information with us at that time, at which point then that would afford us a few more days, at which point Mr. Brown would be able to adopt or change language that may be in relationship to that before the council meeting, and it may save some discussion at the next council meeting because we would have already vetted through the process at the Admin Public Works meeting.
We only know that Mr. Piercy right now is aware of the February 8th date, so at this point, it would be speculating if he could make the Admin Public Works. However, nothing prohibits Mr. Brown from bringing an update to Admin Public Works to the committee for awareness on where it is. But I think Councilmember Clark's motion assures that it will be back at the next February 8th council meeting. But good point there.
So, but my question though is if we needed to amend it or modify it based off of Mr. Brown's conversations, let's say in the interim, regardless if Mr. Percy's present or not at that meeting, might it be more advantageous? And I'm happy to amend her motion to send it back to Admin Public Works so that we can craft that language appropriately if needed.
Rick, do you want to go ahead? It looks like
Yeah,
you
well, I guess my intent would be to continue the dialogue with Mr. Piercy in advance of our next council meeting so that we do have enough clarity working with City Attorney John Young to have a backup resolution ready to go that would address that potential. I guess that would be the thought of the department.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the resolution? All right, so we have the amendment right now to postpone to the next council meeting. So we'll vote on that. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, hold on. We got, how many opposed do we have? Councilmember Dodwell, Councilmember Bertolino, any other? Okay, any abstentions? All right, the motion to postpone passes.
Did we just have 2 nays?
Yes, we did. All right, so that, wait, hold on. We got a little background noise here. All right, so that brings us then to the next resolution, which is 2021-4, which we may, again, if we want to follow the same path, then we'll just do a motion, the same motion that you did, Councilmember Clark, would be appropriate to postpone it to the next council meeting. Would you like to make that motion? All right.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark, is there a second? Councilmember Brost is the second. Any discussion on the motion that's on the table? Same discussion. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, we have 1 opposed so far, Councilmember Bertolino. Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes, and that'll be back at the next council meeting. All right, moving on to miscellaneous, we have the approval of the expenditures. In terms of City Administrator Steve Cross, do you have anything to say regarding the? All right, so we have a motion. Do we need a motion for approval of the expenditures made by Councilmember, I see McCune, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor, say aye. Oh, Councilmember McCune.
Aye.
Aye.
Wait.
Oh.
Aye.
Councilmember McCune had a hand up. Did you have?
Yes, I do. I have a question about the expenditures. I'm sorry, I wasn't motioning to approve.
Okay, so then let's get
I
your
apologize.
question answered. Okay. What's your question?
Okay. I sent an email to Mr. Cross on January 22nd asking for a total cost on line item 94844. And I did not receive an email response back for the total expenditures on that line item. Mr. Cross, do you have that number for me by chance, or can you answer that?
Thank you, Councilmember McCune. I did receive your email. I'm in the process of working with City Attorney Young, gathering that information. So I don't have that information available this evening. But
So we don't keep a, so we don't tally by GL number, that you can just punch that number in, since that's our assigned number to show the total expenditures on each line item?
We're working on that information, and hopefully that we'd have that information tomorrow or the next day at the latest.
Okay, my question was, is we can't do it by line item for any expenditures?
This one, there's a little bit more involved, so it's not as easy a process on this particular line item.
All right, so Steve,
Okay,
you're gonna
can
have to
you
follow up.
expound on that just a tad for me? Because I'm a little confused. Do you feel like some charges were applied to that GL number that shouldn't have been there, or what's the issue?
I just want to make sure that it's an accurate number. I think that question was asked actually in closed session at the last meeting, and I know that City Attorney Young provided you with a relatively accurate number. I want to verify the number that was given to you 2 weeks ago when you asked the same question is an accurate number.
Okay. Okay, I'm finished with my questioning. Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, so I'm assuming, did you still want to make motion to approve the expenditure since you had your hand up?
Yeah, my question does not affect the approval does not affect my question. So yes, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the expenditures as presented.
All right, so we had the motion, and again, remind me, who was the second on that? That was Councilmember McCutcheon. Okay, so let's, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes. All right, we've got 4 receive and file items. Joe, do you want to cover these items one by one or take care of them all?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to do them separately because each of them have a little bit of a different action that's required on the part of City Council. So with your permission, Mayor Pro Tem, I will proceed.
Sure, go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, the first item relates to a conditional use permit that was granted by the Planning and Zoning Commission to Mark and Nancy Fish. The conditional use permit authorizes a solar energy system on their property on Old State Road. A portion of the system is visible from Old State Road, which required the permit and the process. As always, with any conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council has 15 days to exercise its power of review. That 15-day period begins with your receipt and filing of this report. And so the department is just acknowledging that time frame to you. And if there are any questions regarding the commission's review and action, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? All right, if you no action then, Joe, do you?
The next item relates to an outdoor game court that was authorized by the Planning and Zoning Commission on State Route BA. The Planning and Zoning Commission supported the retention of the outdoor game court due to its compliance to all of the zoning regulations associated with the same. And this matter is for your receipt and filing. No action is required, but the Department of Planning is available for any comments or questions. And again, thank you.
Any questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, Joe, you want to go with the next one?
The next one relates to a 90-foot telecommunications tower that is located on Joe's Way, north of Valley Road. This particular item was recently before the City Council relative to its annual renewal, which is a requirement of the conditional use permit. This particular item relates to a second exterior array that was inadvertently installed due to an error by the Department of Planning on the exterior of the tower itself. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the information provided by the Department of Planning and granted the amendment to the conditional use permit to allow the second exterior array to be retained. Again, as with the first item regarding the fishes, the City Council on any action relating to a permit of this nature has the right to exercise its power of review. The power of review begins with the receipt and filing of the report tonight. I would also note that there's been an ongoing issue relative to this tower relating to service and the strength of service in the surrounding area. I want to assure Councilmember Remy, as well as all of the city council members, the department has contacted a gentleman named Greg Stockel. He is the Senior Vice President of Real Estate for AT&T Mobile, and he has promised to have an answer to me this week relative to any changes to this tower that their engineers believe will improve service in the vicinity of Strecker Road, Valley Road, and Kerrs Mill Road. And so I sent that request right before the holiday on December 16th. Mr. Stockel was out for a bit, but he has promised to get me in the response as quickly as possible and no later than this week.
Okay, I see 3 hands up, so I'm going to go in order as I saw them. Councilmember Rambo, then will be followed by Remy and Councilmember Dodwell. So Councilmember Rambo, please.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the last 2 receive and file items, I've seen at least one citizen objection written down and sent about both of those. And I'm just wondering if there was any groundswell of complaint about either that I didn't see, and if make sure you took that into account. The one complaint that I saw on item 2 was literally the people's shoes were squeaking, and the neighbors didn't care for that sound. And the other one, I think it was just an aesthetic complaint. But since these are facilities that are already in place, I'm not sure there's much we can do about it, but I'm just hoping to make sure that you address the citizen complaints as best you could.
Councilmember Rambo, that's a very good question and observation as well. And in both instances, the Department of Planning provided the comments we received through our website to the Planning and Zoning Commission the Monday of the meeting. So they received them that Tuesday morning because of the holiday. And the comments were submitted over the weekend. That's why they only received them on Tuesday. Knowing that and acknowledging that, the department did bring the comments up to the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of its formal presentation on both matters. And in the case of the outdoor game court, there was an analysis done, and for the most part, there was about 300 to 350 feet of separation between the game court and the particular property where the individual had submitted the complaint. And the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that it was something that to make Mr. Jordan aware of, but certainly not something that would preclude a positive action. In terms of the monopole on Joe's Way, the concerns for the most part focused on service for one, on another, the EMFs emitted by the tower, and then finally several from Clarkson Valley residents who we do notify relative to this tower. The department went out to the area where the Clarkson Valley residents reside, took photographs and presented those to the Planning and Zoning Commission that night so they could kind of see what those residents see. In terms of the EMF question from one resident, the owner of the tower, Crown Castle, is working on a response for us. And again, in terms of service, that's come up before. And again, I hope to have a response to all of you, but particularly to Dr. Remy, who brought it up this week.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have Councilmember Remy and I believe Dodwell after.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I share my screen for a second?
Sure, if there's no objections from the council.
Okay. So just to point out to the council, just so everyone understands, this issue here is Joe's Way. And the areas that I've received a lot of complaints about are Ward 2 and Ward 3. All of these red dots here are like complete loss of coverage. And so in and along Strecker Road, coming through, it actually continues on this way. There's also some aspects of Orville and Shepherd that also have difficulty with coverage. So my only question, Mr. Vunich, and Mr. Vunich, I'm most appreciative of your hard work for this. This is really appreciated, is in regards to this. So I've been trying to contact Mr. Stockel for a long time, and I've contacted Chris Pickle, I guess is the other person that works for AT&T, and he and I have spoken numerous times about this. And the thought was that this would not affect this whole area here, but I guess my big question would be, if they add this tower, do they have any way to know whether or not they're really, because when you look at this area, there's a lot of tree cover in and around here, which is in part some of the difficulty. There also is an AT&T station, if I remember correctly from Mr. Pickle. Oh, I know there is one there, but he said that although this is down in the valley, the way that it sits, if they had the ability to put a tower here, it may in fact impact this area a bit differently than having the tower that's already at this location here. So I only raise that question just because if there's other alternatives, I think people would be most appreciative. But I'm most appreciative about what happens, and I'm looking forward to hear what the result is.
And with the Mayor Pro Tem's permission, first and foremost, the approach of the city toward telecommunications tower has almost gone from, almost changed from 180 degrees from 1997 to 2021. And that is a recognition that the telecommunications is an essential service, and that if we need more towers, they're an acceptable, I guess, item. Not so much as in the past, not more so than in the past. And so if AT&T Mobile were to say that they had another tower location somewhere in the vicinity of this poor network service, I think for sure that the city of Wildwood would give it a fair assessment and certainly do what it can to assist. Saying that, the city of Wildwood has a 90-foot tower that was erected for Whisper ISP on Shepherd Road near Orville Road. It's on the top of the ridge there. And certainly if AT&T Mobile or any other provider would be willing to use that, it's certainly available. Our agreement with Whisper ISP does not limit it just to that particular provider, but it's available to any. And so when I talk with Mr. Stockel, I'll make sure he understands that.
Hey, Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember Remy, you got your screen still back up? You're sharing your screen again, Councilmember Remy. Okay. Councilmember Dodwell, I have you up next.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Remy, thank you very much for giving that little bit of analysis. One of the major questions I wanted to ask Joe specifically was, you said you had photos of things. I think for our historical purposes and for those who may be researching in the future, it would be helpful if you had the photos attached to your receive and file document here so that council could look at where and what types of components are going to be added. Also, so that the residents that are in the vicinity would know what additional structure changes are going to occur. I know at the corner of Clayton and Strecker, we have been very adamant about specific design, external trees around the enclosure, how high they can go up, etc. And I think we should take the same steps for areas that reside on less public property as well, because the owners of those properties that sit next to it also need to have their aesthetics professionally done as well. And I think it would be helpful for council to understand physically what we're talking about. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but reading longitude and latitude just doesn't spell it for me. So it would be helpful if there was a picture worth those 1,000 words.
Councilmember Dodwell, I'll apologize. I thought for sure I had included it in the report and it's not there, so that's a mistake on my part. I'll send out the information that I provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission via email
Perfect.
to all of you tomorrow. Just a couple of points. There are actually 2 towers at the Joe's Way site. One is the traditional monopole, and the other is a disguised support structure. It's a pine tree that has telecommunication equipment installed upon it. So we've taken the input from the Clarkson Valley residents pretty seriously, I think, given that we've lowered the monopole from its requested height when it was initially approved, and then any other poles in that area, we've required them to be disguised. The monopole also is painted 2 colors. On the lower half, it's a brown color, architectural brown to match the wood line. And then from there on up, it's painted a light gray to blend with the horizon. So we've done our best in, I think, almost all instances to try to take into account everybody's opinion. I would note that the property that the tower is located on is owned by the Cuba family, and several of the Cuba family live on Joe's Way. So they see an immediate benefit from it, I think.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome, and my apologies again.
It's okay.
All right, thank you, Joe. Last one more item, right, Joe?
Yes, sir. Oh, Miss Edens, I believe, has a question.
Oh, sorry, I did not
Just
see that.
any additional towers in the area that would be considered or improvements. I have talked to some of the residents up there in the Joe's Way area, other areas like Mulberry. They are underserved on internet or have slow connection speeds. And then there is an area in Ward 2 that does not have high speed. So anything that we can do to piggyback, like I know, obviously, Hayes has tried with different towers. Unfortunately, with AT&T, unsuccessfully recently. But anything we could do to remember that there might be a way to improve internet in Ward 2 at the same time would be great. Shameless plug for that area.
The plug is appreciated. I can assure you the Rural Internet Access Committee is blind to ward number, and all they really want to do is achieve high-speed internet to every resident in Wildwood if we can.
I appreciate that. I know I get some comments from Ward 2 that they feel like because they're not wards 1 or 6 that they are forgotten about because they think they're not as cool as wards 1 and 6, but we know in Ward 2 they are. So just wanted to.
All wards are cool, and the Department of Planning doesn't want to leave anybody behind.
That's right. A little sense of humor doesn't hurt on such serious topics. So thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the last item tonight relates to a resolution that was adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission relative to the Special Circumstances Overlay District. As you know, recently the City Council adopted regulations for a new overlay district relative to properties that have special circumstances associated with them. They can be environmental, they can be man-made, or other in many instances. The adoption of the regulations was the first step in the 2-step process. The second and final step is the actual identification of properties that will be subject to the Special Circumstances Overlay District. Given the impact of the city rezoning properties, the city attorney and the Department of Planning believed it was appropriate to have the Planning and Zoning Commission adopt a resolution acknowledging this process and also laying out a tentative timeline, which is part of the cover memorandum. So tonight, that information is being provided to each of you for informational purposes and receipt and filing. And Mr. Young and I are available for any comments or questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions or comments regarding Councilmember Bartoni?
Joe, you've answered this question multiple times, but I keep getting it asked to me multiple times. The purpose of the Special Circumstance Overlay District is not to encourage development, and there are no development plans on any of these properties currently. Is that correct?
I know of no development plans on any potential properties that might be considered for the overlay district. And again, as I've mentioned in other instances, we found that the planned residential development overlay district doesn't give us enough tools to treat certain properties that bring with them characteristics that are very different, very difficult, or a risk to the general health, safety, and welfare of the public. The special circumstances overlay district, through the foresight of the city council, actually gives us those tools to ensure that if a property is developed, we have a very, very high guarantee that it is safe for use.
Thank you for reiterating that, Joe.
My pleasure, sir.
Okay, thank you, Joe. That
Thank
concludes
you.
the receive and file items. I do see one hand up from Councilmember McHugh.
Hey, Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry, Joe Vunich. So I just want to ask, I read the resolution, and I know this came up in my concern to you when we were talking about the reserve development and how the stream or Cox Creek or Bottom Creek, I'm sorry, was there, and some presentations were given, and the concerns of the location of that. Will this include any type of watershed? And I know there's the grade and exceeds this and exceeds that. I just want to make sure that anytime that there's any type of natural water stream that this will apply. Does this cover it, or does it have to meet these certain prongs of a different slope or a different location or where it's located on the properties? Can you explain that for me?
Generally speaking, Councilmember McCune, the intent of the special circumstances overlay district was not to ignore the main channels that form the 9 watersheds. Based upon the efforts of the Watershed Erosion Task Force, we know that those are very sensitive areas, very unpredictable, and in many instances could present a threat to public and private property and people that are on those properties or use the roadways adjacent to the creeks themselves. So in some instances, I think you will see recommendations for certain properties due to their proximity or closeness to a main channel to be governed by the special circumstances overlay district. I cannot say that the reserve is particularly a project that I think will be there, but in a few weeks, we'll have a public hearing and I'll have more information for you at that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Councilmember Remy?
It's for miscellaneous not receive and file when you're ready.
We can proceed with that. I don't see any other hands up.
No, I just wanted to say first and foremost, I think our Mayor Pro Tem did an excellent job this evening. And just want to applaud him for that first and foremost. But I also want to make a more blanketed general statement in the midst of a pandemic and this council. We've got 16 council members. We've got a phenomenal city staff. And I think that the way that we behave and we put our city and our citizens ahead of any of our own personal interests is so evident. We do so with civility, and we do it, I think, in a way that we're able to have meaningful discussions. And I say that because in the region, there are some activities that are currently ongoing with some other council that I think is conduct unbecoming of being a council member. And that's why I'm most proud of our council, because we've really risen above and tried to do what we think is best. And I hope that the rest in the region follow suit.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Remy. All right, I don't see any other hands up. I do want to make a comment. Thank you very much so much for the honor to serve as your Mayor Pro Tem for tonight. It was a pleasure to preside over the meeting and just really appreciate working with everyone here. So thanks again. All right, we are, yes? Oh, we have the interim city administrator Cross that has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. As we adjourn this session, or at least as we move from this session into resuming the closed session. I just want to remind everyone, if you would please to leave this meeting, close out of this meeting, close your laptop, and then we can adjourn into the community room. And then when you do return to council chambers, then to adjourn the general session, you can log back into the meeting then if you would. But I just want to remind everybody to leave this particular meeting, please. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you. Just going to mention that. So right now we are going to adjourn our main meeting here. So can we get a motion to adjourn? All right, made by Councilmember Flasher and seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, the main council meeting is adjourned. Now we're resuming back with our work session. And as the interim city administrator said, that will be the closed session. Thanks.
Yeah.
We're back into the work session here. Can we get a motion to adjourn the work session made by Councilmember Remy, seconded by Councilmember Flasher? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. The work session is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.